Hello and welcome to SaaS Marketing Insights, the show where we ask SaaS founders, CEOs, marketers and investors about the lessons they've learned in their quest to grow their companies. My name is Paul Stevenson and I'm founder and CEO of SaaS marketing agency 47 Insights. On today's show, I have an interview with Jason Reichel, CEO of Go Nimbly. Hope you enjoy it. I'm here with Jason Reichl, CEO at Go Nimbly. And Jason, can you explain to anyone who doesn't know yet just what Go Nimbly is? Because you're a new kind of operation.
That's correct. So we are the world's first, as far as I know, but the world's first revenue operations consultancy. So,
Can I stop you there?
Yes.
What does that mean?
It means that we use a very specific generalist approach to operations centered around a couple of skills, which we can get into later, but mostly it means breaking down silos in organizations. So what we really focus on is either acting as or transforming organizations into being a new kind of model of revenue operations. So I like to liken it to going from traditional development to agile development, or going from manufacturing to lean manufacturing. So revenue operations is this idea of a centralized operations team that doesn't report to, say, the head of sales or marketing, but directly the COO or CRO or CEO, and they're focused on one thing, which is driving revenue for the company.
Okay, so it's mostly sales, marketing, and ops.
It's
the functions. I'm trying to.
Yeah, so if you think about your standard go-to-market team being sales, marketing, customer success, maybe some people consider finance part of that because they interact with the customer. That front end team, which we call the go-to-market team, is your front end UI to the customer, right? The revenue operations team is the supporting function that supports that team holistically. So instead of having sales operations, marketing operations, and customer success operations, you would just have revenue operations, and that team would take care of all of the operations for the business.
And you're just doing this just for SaaS businesses?
Just for SaaS and PaaS companies.
Yeah.
Because of the dynamic nature of SaaS and PaaS businesses, their operations need to be very flexible and moving basically for each milestone that they might go through in their company's trajectory. And because of that, revenue operations makes the most sense. Any organization should adopt it. I think 15 years from now, you'll be seeing Coca-Cola going through a transformation of revenue operations. But it's just, we're in a marketplace and we get to experience this and change companies rapidly. And so we focused on that niche at Go Nimbly.
So we're based here, or we're in your offices here in San Francisco.
Correct.
So I guess you're working with a lot of companies in the Valley. Do you want to tell us some of the names, people you're working with? Sure.
So we have offices in New York and here in San Francisco. And we're primarily working with large enterprise SaaS companies right now. So Zendesk, Twilio, PagerDuty, those kind of organizations. We focus primarily on stage C to IPO companies. Really, when operations become a key value differentiator for your organization, we want to be the default consultancy for all SaaS companies. But just because of the structure of it right now, we're kind of focused on that area right now.
So you must see, working with a range of SaaS businesses, a whole bunch of different challenges. They're in different vertical sectors and industries, but you must see these repeated patterns of challenges.
Yep.
So, how do you guys step in and get to understand a market one of your clients is in and help to solve the challenges for them?
Yeah, I think the main thing to understand is a lot of the companies that we work with are after the same milestones from a business perspective, right? And we have always been pretty data-driven here at Go Nimbly. So we know if you're going from stage B to stage C, you're probably going to scale your marketing team. And because you're going to scale your marketing team, you're going to need to do these operational work streams. We don't use the term projects because we don't think of it as a single thing. It's an ongoing thing. Go Nimbly is actually a subscription-based consultancy. So very much like the SaaS model, they pay monthly.
So you match your model with
the customers, right? Yeah, exactly. So that we understand all the pains they feel for that model, but also all the advantages that they have as well. And so we'll help them move from one major milestone to another, say scaling their marketing team and setting up all the infrastructure, process, tools, enablement, and insights necessary to really scale your marketing, for example, in that B2C space that you might be in. If you're going to IPO, it's really about helping them become SOX compliant and other things like that. So as far as where we map these projects to where they are as an organization to understand their specific business, we actually deploy a team of revenue operations consultants to them, and they actually act as if they operate that company. So we manage right now about $216 million a month of recurring revenue for our customers. So that makes us managing around $2 billion. It makes us the largest operator of SaaS business in the Valley, if not the world. So for us, it's really about understanding how these organizations need to grow, where they need to invest. There's a lot of smart people here, obviously. But I think one of the key things that we realized is even if you get a world-class operator in and say they're the COO or they're your operations person, the chances that they've seen sales territory management at where you are as an organization is they probably touched it about 4 years ago, right? We are doing that work stream constantly for, in the last 18 months, we've seen pretty much every work stream 4 to 5 times. And so we have the ability to be very up to date, whereas even if you hire someone who's very, very operationally sound, there's going to be that lag time, right? And in the environment that we exist in with SaaS companies, that lag time can cost you a lot of competitive advantage, right? And I think what we're always trying to do is make sure that we are maximizing the potential spend, LTV of every single prospect that our customer converts. So, one of the things that we've noticed is when you're a traditional operations company just siloed into these individual silos, maybe you are, you have your KPIs, if you're marketing ops, you're trying to increase open rates or whatever you're trying to do, sales, you're trying to increase pipeline. All that's fine, but what ends up happening is that operations team as a whole only has about 10% impact to the revenue of the customer. So that kind of means a standard operations team, the way that we look at a standard operations team, is if they stopped hiring sales and marketing people and the operators just did their job, if you were a $1 million company 1 year later, you would gain 10%. Right, because you've gotten more efficiencies down, you've scaled your customers, you've cross-sold properly, you've done all these operational things. With revenue operations, because that's one team and all they care about is the revenue impact, you can see about 36% increase.
Wow.
And so that's the delta, where we tell people that delta between 10 and 36 is because you've taken your eye off the personalization of the customer, because you have your teams operating in silos and they fill the gaps so they don't spend as much. Yeah. And so that's kind of what we're trying to eliminate. We're trying to eliminate the gaps customers feel. Through operations. So I'm trying to turn operations into a revenue source instead of a cost reduction center, or worse, viewed as a cost center to an organization.
Oh, absolutely. So you're one of 2 co-founders, is that right?
Yes, there's 2 co-founders and 3 partners. Okay. So there's 5 of us on the leadership board.
So how did you get started in the world of SaaS? And you mentioned earlier that you started out in marketing, right?
Yes, I started out in marketing. And very quickly just kind of fell in love with tech. And I was working at a company called Rackspace based in San Antonio. Yeah. And while I was working there, I worked on the first redundant server cluster, which would become what Salesforce is built upon, which would become basically the cloud, right? And I was like, this is really interesting. I'm very interested in it. And I ended up working as a consultant at a SI of Salesforce's. For about 10 years and running very large delivery teams, but always really focused on the idea of, marketing, sales, buyer kind of experience. And, I came out to Silicon Valley, started an arm of that business out here, and got seduced by, my love of marketing and product. I ended up becoming a product manager, became a VP of product at a couple Salesforce-backed companies. And then while I was there, I was like, man, I really love doing this product stuff, but I kept having this nagging feeling that, the companies I worked for had great products, but they didn't have great businesses. Yeah. And I was like, man, I would hate to see this product not exist in the marketplace because we don't know how to operate. We don't know how to scale our sales team. We don't know how to market this properly. Exactly. And so I was like, I think there is a little bit of a need for me to use my skills and understand how to operate these businesses at scale and kind of show these organizations how to operate their business, because I want them focused on building an amazing product. If you go to SaaS or any of these kind of events, they'll often say like, hey, the fact that you're in this room probably means you have an amazing product, but how you operate your business is actually going to be the difference between, the success you want and the success you could have, right? And I think that's a really important message. And there's a lot of things changing in Silicon Valley right now. I think when I started 10 years ago in this space, the average age of a startup founder was, 26 or 27, and now it's 33, 34. And I think what's happening is like they're not their first go around. Maybe they've had something that failed, or maybe they just know they could do better, and so they're more open to these ideas of operating more successfully than they ever were before.
Yeah, I think everybody sort of knows what the ground rules are now, whereas, SaaS is relatively young industry, isn't it? That as a delivery mechanism, 20 years for software, but subscriptions go way back, and so we're all standing on the shoulders of giants.
Correct.
And learning.
Yeah, and everybody wants to be the next Salesforce. And I think that the pressure is so much higher than it's ever been for these organizations to deliver.
Yeah. Especially with investors.
Yes, absolutely.
Everyone wants a return in a way yesterday.
Yeah, and we work with a couple of VC firms, and we see even they're spending the same amount of money, but willing to diversify it across more companies. So that means you're not going to get as much. So you don't, as a company, a SaaS company, you don't have as much ability to waste. You don't have as much ability to just rely on growth numbers to really push you forward, right? You need to show that you can operate this business.
Yeah, it's got to be efficient.
Yes.
So how long has Go Nimbly been operating?
Yeah, so we've been operating for 5 years, but in this model for the last 3.
Right.
And we've seen, since we've adopted this model, 100% year-over-year growth. This is the first year that we're actually marketing the company. It's been all referral based up until that point. So
all word of mouth.
All word of mouth, yeah. And hey, I think there's a better way to do this. And so we're starting to market the company, and we expect to double again next year, and hopefully continue to do that for the next couple of years. So
what do you see? You're one of the players in this market. How do you see what you're doing changing the way that SaaS businesses operate going forward? Being a lot leaner and meaner, outsourcing, RevOps.
Yep.
Do you see any other big changes?
Well, I think in general, this is my bold statement. There's going to be people who are obviously watching this or listening to it who are going to go, "This will never happen." But I think that it's a very real possibility that 25 years from now, companies will not think twice about BPOing out their entire operations, everything to a company like Go Nimbly, right? Who want essentially to know that it's being run well and know that all this kind of stuff is being implemented and it's at the right place and time to scale it. And so my big bet is that you're going to see a lot more BPO offerings emerge in the marketplace. A lot more of core competencies. You see this already in accounting. You see Atrium and in the law firm tech space. You see a lot of these organizations that are really service companies. So if I really made a bet, I'm going to think that we're going to see a big investment and a big wave in technology-enabled service companies. Yeah. Who you see it with Uber and all these other companies, which are for the consumer side, and usually the consumer side is an indicator of what's going to happen on the B2B side, right? And so if I can provide the same kind of experience at much cheaper and at much higher scale, I think that a lot more organizations will really take seriously BPOing out or using a service company to run major parts of their business. Yeah, so it's just all about efficiency, and they can see there's an opportunity to make it more efficient. It's about efficiency, but I think really what it's about is allowing them to focus on the core of what they're good at, right? I've not met a CEO at a SaaS company that wakes up every day passionate about the operations of their systems, processes, and so, when you look at that side, you want the people who are passionate about that to be doing that work, right? And it's not something where, I can't tell you how many times I've seen someone in marketing, as soon as they're able, leave marketing and go work on the product. Yeah. Right? And that's because in those organizations, it's not really as sexy to be part of the operating mechanics of it. And I think that you need those people who do believe and who find that job to be sexy, right? Yeah. And everyone at Go Nimbly at their heart are an analytical nerd who, really wants to make these companies operate better, because we feel like our job is to make the workflow of our customers more enjoyable, right? It's more enjoyable to have the work be less hard, less cumbersome, and get more return out of it. Yeah. Right? So everyone's enjoying themselves a little bit more. Yeah. They concentrate on the stuff that they're good at. You deliver the stuff that you need to do for them, and the end result is more efficient, but everyone's happier as well. Yes. Happiness is very important here in Silicon Valley. Cool. So how do you see that interface, the role
changing? Because I know you guys, you've got a chief revenue officer here.
Correct. Yeah.
How do you see, this BPO movement changing the way that the organizations and the service interface?
Well, the first thing that I think that we have to sort of acknowledge is, yes, subscription model, yes, SaaS companies, all of that's relatively new in the marketplace, but all of our business is still built on this very traditional idea of siloing the organization into these very strict departments, right? Mm-hmm. And you have sales, let's just do marketing and sales as an example so we don't have to name everything. But you have marketing and sales, and if you do a Google search, the first thing you'll see is misalignment come up and, the word handoff, which I don't really believe in, and, all of these kind of things.
It's artificial barriers.
Artificial barriers, but your customer doesn't want any of that.
They don't understand it.
Yeah,
they don't care.
And in the B2C space, customers demand all this level of personalization, right? In the B2B space, we act like they have to, they have to be exposed to how the sausage is made all the time. And I think what's really interesting about those silos is, we have the ability in the tech space to break those down through technology and process, training, actually using data, and yet we don't. And so I think the big question is, why are we so... It's probably natural for us to want to silo. There's a lot of, if you go back in history and kind of look at the story of, the silo syndrome and where it comes from, it's pretty natural for us to want to do these things because we want to be told we're good and we have to rely on a bunch of other people. It's actually very difficult to get that same result. And so there's a lot of advantages for the silo, but the main disadvantage is that you can't grow your organization and you can't become, you can't steer it in the way that you want to. There's too many individual boats, right? And it's really hard to push it towards this goal.
Yeah, it's like a flotilla of ships.
Exactly, right. And so ultimately what we're trying to accomplish is sort of narrow that down to one North Star that everyone can drive on, which is what we think should be revenue, right? And everything around the organization is around that, and everything becomes, from metrics to indicators, right? So all of the marketing metrics and stuff that we used to care about, they become indicators. Are we pointed in the right direction? Are we still moving forward? But the entire organization can move towards this one thing. Once you have that piece where the organization can move towards one thing, it's much easier to add on things like Go Nimbly or other services because it's easy to point those in a direction. It's even easier to hire people. It's even easier to use other services. It's easier to bring contractors on. It's much more fluid and you can actually move much faster. I find that a lot of organizations, to take a very specific, tangible, tactical thing, they want to trust their data, but they know that their data is bad, so they can't trust their reports, right? And you just look at that and you go, okay, so you could apply that across the board. Lots of companies want to work with Go Nimbly, but they feel like they couldn't take advantage of our holistic offering because they're so siloed, because they're so broken right now, right? And when do we make that transition to, okay, we are going to move forward and we are going to point ourselves in this direction and kind of align all the ships, all the boats, right? So I think that one key thing that's happening in the industry is things like CRO coming up, because that was the original question, right? Yeah. And with the CRO coming up, what we're actually saying is we're actually going to put someone who is a generalist, chief revenue officer, is going to be kind of in charge of sales and marketing. They're going to be in charge of revenue as a product. They're going to be in charge, ultimately, hopefully, of the operations piece of that. And they are going to manage this in a more generalized fashion. And when you do that, then what you have to do is pick things that are in common between all those silos, right? And as soon as you do that, you start getting cross-functionality be built into your silos, which then change your entire organization. Alignment happens, right? The reason alignment doesn't happen is because you're not aligned, right? And that, I think people think we are aligned because we all want X product to be the best product in the world, and that's really not enough from a day-to-day perspective. It's hard to understand how your job's tied to that. So I kind of see these sort of roles that are generalists getting more status, right? And people are looking for them. And and a lot of times people have this very clear idea of a CRO, and what they'll end up doing is just promoting their best salesperson to CRO, and they actually won't know how to operate, and they actually won't know anything about marketing, and then the marketing team kind of is still over here, right? So there's still a little bit of posturing right now because people don't know. I read this State of Revenue Operations, which is a guide they released, and it said that 46% of SaaS companies are trying to make a transition to revenue operations as a framework. But of those 46%, 76% of them were failing because they didn't know how to do it, right? And so, we're in a very dangerous place where people are hearing, there's a better way to operate, but there's not enough people who know how to operate that way to actually guide people the right way, right? And so all these companies are going to try this and they're going to fail. And, I don't want, my fear, right, as Go Nimbly is, I don't want revenue operations, which is really a transformational operating framework, to be tied to people who don't know how to do it, because there's not enough information out there right now. So that's why I'm doing podcasts like this, so that we can talk about it, so that people start to understand, there are companies that know the how of this. Not that there's a transformational need, not that we're trying to break down silos, which is all, I've never met someone that says, no, that's not true. But really there is a how, and there is a practical way of doing it. And so I think what I'm trying to do with Go Nimbly is paint that picture of how companies do it, because I honestly don't care if you use Go Nimbly. I think of us as a doctor. If the problem is severe enough, you're going to come to us. We know how to fix it. We know how to build long-term partnerships with you. But ultimately, all businesses from day one, when you're in a WeWork, you should be using this framework from day one on how you're going to operate your company. It will save you so much money. It will save you, if you're a founder, it will save you giving away parts of your company that you don't have to give away to found, all of that stuff.
Worth a lot.
Yeah. So I think that's what's changing. I see a lot of people eager to jump on. I see CRO title being one of those things that someone's eager to jump onto, because it's easy to create a title and put a job posting out there in the world. But there's still a lot of lack of meaning right now in definition. And so I think that we'll see in the next 12 to 13 months, I don't know why I picked 13, but 12 to 18 months, I think what we'll start to see is just more definition coming into the how. What is actually the job of a CRO? What is actually the function of a revenue operations team? How do they operate? Who do they report to? I get asked all the time, do they report to marketing or do they report to sales? And I'm like, well, whoever has the closest relationship to the customer and wants to make that happen, that's who they should report to, because ultimately everyone should be working in service of the customer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Jason, that is a fantastic summary about what you guys do.
Yeah.
I know you're a bit jet lagged.
Yeah.
but I think you explained that very well. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah,
I
awesome.
really appreciate getting to the bottom of what revenue operations is all about.
Great.
How you guys do it.
I'm glad you were able to do it so quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Jason. For more info on Go Nimbly, please visit gonimbly.com. For more info about this show, and to get our links to iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and YouTube, check out www.47insights.com. And if you have any SaaS marketing insights that you'd like to share on the show, please get in touch. Until next time.